Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. In the last part we started off the Fire Temple and got about halfway through it. And hey look, a pillar! And Navi actively has something to say about this, so you can probably figure out what this actually is. You can see down from here. Isn't that the room where we saw Darunia? The pillar in question that we need to keep in mind for later is in fact this very pillar, but we actively can't do anything about this until we have A, the boss key, and B, the dungeon item. Thankfully, we're relatively close to where that is. Now, the way this previous room works is fire everywhere. Whenever you see two pillars, generally between that and the wall or that and another pillar, there is invisible firewalls that won't peek up until you're right next to them. So you need to not tiptoe your way through this, but go at a more careful and deliberate pace so that you don't accidentally walk face first into fire and take unnecessary damage. There is a set path to take, but even though our goal is on the northern end of this area, or at least technically far western, we can't actively do anything to get there from the northern portion of the map. We need to head around to the southern portion with the key we have. Also, you may have seen there was another door on the wall a moment ago on screen. That was one of the fake doors. You may have noticed if you go back and look. It pops out from the wall a bit more than the other doors. That's how you can tell if it's a fake door or a real door. We'll even see one much closer to the screen in a few moments, so I'll make sure to point that out when we get to there. Something I think Ocarina of Time does relatively well in most of its dungeons, there's only really one case it really doesn't, is set pieces. Between this room, the pillar room, the giant lava area, most of the dungeons in this game have that one room you'll always remember to give it more of an identity. Doesn't have much of that way in terms of mini-bosses in my eyes, but it does at least have visual identifiers for the actual stages beyond just the room with the locked door, the room with the pressure switch, so on and so forth. Like Great Deku Tree has the giant cylindrical feel as well as the fall down through the web. Dodongo's Cavern has the giant skull. Jabu-Jabu has the stomach room, and that's actually about it for that place. The temples especially start going really hard on that. The only dungeon that doesn't really, in my eyes, is the next dungeon, and even then that's because that place is relatively samey intentionally. This is a fake door. Notice how it juts out from the wall a bit instead of sinking in like a normal door does. Whenever you see one of these, bomb it to kill it. And again, you can see, doors that are actually doors are set more in. But now it's time for the mini-boss. This is the Flare Dancer. This thing comes out from the fire, then spends about 5 seconds spinning before it tries to attack you. You can use that opportunity to attack it with a bomb to make its true form become apparent and go all out and attacking it. You can use bombs, you can slice it with your sword, jump attacks, do anything you can, really. Arrows don't work, but otherwise, yeah. I'm actually not sure what happens if you hit it with a hook shot, though. I actually recommend just going for sword strikes or more bombs rather than doing jump attacks, though, as well. They're stronger, they're a lot harder to hit because these things run around in a relatively fast circle, and if you miss, you're gonna have to side hop around the other side again. The HP of a Flare Dancer is signified by the color of the fire when it's actively in its Fire Dancer mode. I believe it goes to red, to blue, to green, to dead. So you at least have a way to tell if you're doing well on the actual HP value here. This is also the rare enemy type that only appears in this area from my memory. I don't think there's another one outside of the two we fight in this very dungeon. I think. There might be one in that area. I don't think so. It's not like, say, Majora's Mask, where you have each dungeon's mini-boss that is definitively set as that dungeon's mini-boss, and then a place to refight all of the various mini-bosses throughout the game behind a waterfall later on in the game. Which is one of my least favorite hard pieces to get in that game, admittedly, but still, it's fun. Sure, I have to fight some annoying mini-bosses again, but oh well. And we got another bomb the switch puzzle here, this time just to get up one last chain link ladder. Notable, chain link ladders you can't hookshot onto. I want to say the way that any hookshotable ladder tends to work is that if it's made of wood, you can just get onto it no matter what. But if it's a chain link like this, in the rare case it happens if ever, you can only hookshot onto it if the backing is wooden. or if there's nothing behind it in general, which is why you may have been able to get onto the chain walls in the room with the block we had to push. Now, I'm actively using Furora's Wind here for the first time. You use Furora's Wind, you spend some magic, you create a warp point. You can then use Furora's Wind to warp back to it. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm about to speed up in this room. This is a mirror to the room where we got the 200 rupee chest in the last part, but this one is required for progress as the dungeon item is in this room. You step on the switch, the fire gets lowered, the usual. However, I want to take out all the fire keys in this room before progressing on, as if you fall down, you are all the way back in the room where we went between, the room we were in about a minute and a half ago, maybe 2 minutes now, actually. The cross between the northern and southern portion of the room before the flare dancer. And I don't feel like backtracking. And to actively get to this timer in time, you need to hug the inner wall, not the outer wall. So you need to take the very precarious path, and if I fall down, I wanted to have the Furora's Wind restore point, just so I don't have to redo those 3 or 4 rooms over and over and over and over again. Furora's Wind, it's useful when it is, but when it's not, it's useless. What's that? If something's useful, it's useful? You don't say, Kyle. But the dungeon item for this dungeon is the Megaton Hammer. Press C to smash and break junk. It's so heavy, you need to use 2 hands to swing it. It's sort of like another melee weapon, sort of like a sword, but it's just mapped to the C buttons. Kind of like Decker Sticks in that regard, honestly. And it is stronger than the Master Sword, I think. But the big point of it is that it can knock down certain items like this. It can knock away certain other projectiles, and there's also certain switches only it can activate that seldom come into play. Ocarina of Time, barring the bow and the hookshot, in my eyes, is one of the Zelda games that's relatively guilty of one thing, and that's only having you use the dungeon item usually in the temple you got it in, and then maybe puzzles once per dungeon moving forward, which isn't a lot of use, honestly. When it comes to Zelda games that don't do that, I can only think of a couple, like, Minish Cap does a decently good job of it, barring the mole mitts after you take care of that respective dungeon. The Oracle games, you use most of your items a lot throughout the game, especially Oracle Seasons. Wind Waker, you use most of them a lot, but there's also some you just don't have for that long because of how short that game is in comparison if you're only doing story stuff. Twilight Princess, you never use the spinner after a while, and that's a big case of that. I actually can't recall how good Skyward Sword is at that. I think they use the items a lot, but I can't quite recall because it's been a while. I've only played Skyward Sword twice, as I believe I mentioned before. Up here, though, is one of the switches I was talking about. It's a rusted switch. This switch looks rusted. Bang! Use the hammer, you can activate rusted switches, and we can find ourselves back at here where we can see there's just a Song of Time block. I believe whenever there's a Song of Time block, or a Scarecrow song location, though, like this, generally speaking, the game wants you to be in a specific location for it to register the Song of Time. And if that's not the case, you can't even get to there anyway. As what we're doing here is freeing this not last Goron, like second to last Goron, I think. But you need the Megaton Hammer to actually do anything. In fact, yeah, I think you can hit that Song of Time block below. I actually just never do it. That's right. I think. This is a game I'm so used to playing that I actually forget how to experiment. Are you releasing me? Am I free to go? I'll tell you a secret for saving me. A door is hidden inside the statue at the entrance to this temple. But the Goron's special crop won't work on it. Don't you have anything stronger? Well, you might recall a few moments ago I did use the hammer to break a certain type of statue. We just need to do that again. And I believe this is the last small key in the dungeon. I actively can't recall. Oh well. And from here we just need to backtrack, as there's a very quick way to the entrance right back over here, because you might remember this is the pillar we need to hit. Smack it down, and it falls faster than us. Oh, that was fine. I don't know why they go all out dramatic with that when you take no fall damage. I mean, it would be dickish just to kill you all of a sudden like that, don't get me wrong. But it's like there's just certain areas in the game where you're just programmed not to take fall damage and just stands out. Either way, this is the statue that the Goron was talking about, but you actively can't take care of these things from the front. You just need to hit them on the side. Also, I've always hated how these statue pieces disappear because it's just out of nowhere. I get they don't want to make them crumble and have, like, environmental damage and shit. But come on, that's just strange. And here's a relative rarity in this game, or at least in this point, from this point in the game moving forward, an actual kill them all room. Moving forward in the Adult Link dungeons, there's still going to be a couple of these, but given that small keys are a thing in the adult dungeon, there we go, there's the sentence forming in my head. Kill them all rooms to unlock the door that aren't mini-bosses are a lot less common. Also, hey look, another gold sculpture on like. I don't know why they did this twice in this dungeon. I mean, I guess technically speaking, the other one's optional and this one's required. But... That is, I believe, gold sculpture number 5 for this dungeon. I forget, how many does that put that on? I want to say 61, 62? I know the number's on screen right now, but I haven't edited those on yet. The order I go for editing this LP is place down footage, edit footage, reduce audio levels, another flare dancer, by the way. I'm just speeding this up so we're not here for an extra minute than we need to be. Commentate, then any extra little bits like that, or removing unnecessary bits, such as me burping, which I've had to do several times. Or coughing, especially coughing fits during, like, midwinter recordings. Because my throat gets super dry. And as a relatively out of nowhere reward, we get one last small chest. I want to say this is just some bombs. Yeah. Why? They're not used during the boss fight. So why? And we got one last heavy switch, and there's the boss key. You actually could have seen this from earlier by going through this other door, but I didn't. Are you releasing me? Am I free to go? Oh, I see. Big Brother Darunia asked you to rescue me. I owe you big time. Please help Big Brother. Sure thing. But the more important thing is, we got the boss key. Dungeons like this, where you see the boss door right at the start, have always both intrigued me but irritated me, because you just see that and you know, ah, shit. This is a labyrinth, isn't it? But at the same time, it gives you a clear marker of what's where, and I can appreciate that. There's just some dungeons that are really famous for being annoying, rather, that do that. Open the door, me. I can tell I was looking at my notes there and forgot to press A first. With that, it's time for us to enter the boss fight, and it's uber long cutscene. I'm not even joking. The cutscene to start this boss fight where the boss's name is dropped and all is about 40 to 45 seconds long? I don't know why it's so needlessly long. Alright, next boss fight is Volvagia. This fight is a bit annoying that you can only damage it during certain phases. Whenever Volvagia comes out of a lava hole like this, any of the 9 across the field, you can damage it by either using the Megaton Hammer or your sword. I'd actually recommend the Megaton Hammer as I think it actively does more damage against it. Most other methods can't damage it. The other portion of the fight, Volvagia spends in the sky, either breathing fire at you, making rocks fall from the ceiling at you, or just trying to run into you in general despite being above you like that. It stays like this for far too long, making this fight honestly drag on. This is one of my least favorite boss fights in the game, despite looking cool, just because it takes forever. Also, if I'm recalling correctly, behind the scenes wise, I I think Volvagia shares some source code with cutscene R-Wings in Star Fox 64, as there is some remnants of the R-Wings in Star Fox 64 in this game, because you can, like, access one in the code and have it fly around, I think, Kokiri Forest or something like that. I forget the exacts, but that is apparently a thing. I think what would have made this fight a bit more entertaining is if whenever it was floating in the sky like before, or this second floating in the sky where it's making rocks fall down. Watch out for the shadows, by the way. When the rock lands, it splits into other rocks, and those other rocks can still hurt you, so watch out. Like that. This fight hurts. If you had a way to damage Volvagia while it was up in the sky, like maybe using arrows in one specific method, or at least in a specific method to speed up it going back into the ground so we can damage it like this fight wouldn't be so bad, but it's just... it's tedious. It's the one boss fight in the game where it's one of two boss fights, actually, now that I think about that. I really think that, too. Most of the boss fights in this game are relatively quick and easy. This is one of the few that's just slow and easy. Yeah, Volvagia hurts, but it hurts my patience more than it hurts my spirit, if that makes sense. Looks cool, though. And I have a feeling that was the intent. Emphasizing more so the cinematic portion rather than the fun-to-play portion for once. Gotta say, though, the manga by Akira Himekawa really upped the dramatic tension of this boss fight, making Volvagia a dragon that Link adopted from Hyrule Castletown Market as a child. And now he has to kill his friend. Because sorrow's fun, right? What do you mean it's every author's favorite thing to do to their characters? What do you mean I'm also guilty of that? Shut up. This fight, though, again, long, nothing too notable otherwise. It's not even like we use the dungeon item to just make damaging Volvagia easier like we tend to through most of these dungeons, where we use the dungeon item to then damage the boss fight afterwards using the sword. The Megaton Hammer is just the best way of damaging this fight. Although one cool thing behind the scenes, at least, technically speaking, there's two Volvagias in this fight. The one that flies around is different than the one that pops out. I think they found that out just by going beneath the ground or some shit with a camera. That sounds like it would be a boundary break thing. The only thing as well that changes the farther you get into this fight, I believe, is the amount of times Volvagia decides to pop out from hole to hole. As if you stand in the corner, you'll notice Volvagia's little earthquake signifying which hole it's going to come out of will pop from one hole to another, upwards of, I think, 4 times by the end of the fight. But, again, just stand in one place, and you don't have to worry about running to it. Just run to the final one, and you're safe. Oh god, my HP is super low. My closest meeting with fate I've had during a Zelda boss fight. That's definitely been 1/4 of a heart during Twilight Princess, but oh boy. Ah, well, let's see who the sage is. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate what you did. I thank you on behalf of the entire Goron race. You turned out to be a real man, just as I thought you would. By the way, I, the Wild Darunia, turned out to be the Great Sage of Fire. Isn't that funny, brother? Well, this must be what they call destiny. Nothing has made me happier than helping you seal the evil here. Hey, brother, take this. This is a medallion that contains the power of the fire spirits and my friendship. You received the Fire Medallion. Darunia awakens as a sage and adds his power to yours. Don't forget, now you and I are true brothers. But with that, I'm going to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 22, we're going to be exploring a bit around Death Mountain now that things are more calm, before heading on towards the next dungeon objective. See you guys then.